I never thought I'd have cops banging on my door in the middle of a lesson. My name is Adrian Carter, and I'm a high school teacher. I live alone, keep to myself, and prefer it that way. No block parties, no small talk over the fence, no forced socializing with nosy neighbors. Apparently, that was enough to make me suspicious. It started on a Wednesday afternoon. I was in the middle of teaching a virtual class, history. Today's topic was World War II, when I heard a hard knock at my front door. I ignored it. Whoever it was could wait. Then came another knock, louder, sharper, followed by a voice. "Police department, Mr. Carter, please open the door." I froze. The chat room on my screen filled with question marks from my students. I stood slowly, muting my mic. My stomach twisted as I walked toward the door, my mind racing. What the hell was this about? I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open, revealing two uniformed officers. The first one, Officer Daniels, was tall and broad-shouldered, his expression unreadable behind mirrored sunglasses. The second, Officer Hughes, was shorter, arms crossed, watching me carefully. Daniels was the first to speak. "Sir, we received a call from a concerned neighbor about possible suspicious activity at this residence." I blinked. "Suspicious activity? What?" I asked, genuinely baffled. "I've been inside all day. I'm a teacher. I'm literally in the middle of a class right now." Daniels didn't look convinced. "The caller reported that you've been seen keeping your curtains shut at all times, speaking to unknown individuals for hours on end, and generally acting secretive." I stared at him. Then it hit me. Karen. Of course, it was Karen. Karen, the self-appointed neighborhood watchdog. Karen had lived across the street for years. The queen of nosy neighbors. She knew everything about everyone, or at least she thought she did. If you weren't attending her summer BBQs, gossiping about local drama, or participating in the neighborhood Facebook group, you were an outsider. And outsiders were suspicious. I had ignored her forced small talk, skipped her invitations, politely, refused her friendly advice on how to be a better neighbor. Apparently, that was enough to put me on her watch list. I exhaled sharply, trying to keep my voice steady. "I teach online," I explained. "The unknown individuals are my students, and the curtains, I keep them closed because I don't like people staring into my house." Officer Hughes raised an eyebrow. "Would you mind if we take a quick look inside?" I clenched my jaw. I did mind. I shouldn't have to prove my innocence in my own damn home, just because some woman across the street didn't like the way I lived. But I also knew how quickly these situations could go sideways, so I stepped back. Fine. The unwelcome inspection. They entered cautiously, scanning my living room, laptop open, virtual class still running. 28 muted students watching everything unfold in real time. Daniels glanced at my bookshelf, filled with history books, student essays, and grading papers. Hughes looked at the desk, lesson plans, school files, a half-empty coffee mug. After a minute, they exchanged a look. Daniels sighed. "All right, Mr. Carter. Everything seems normal here." "No kidding." I crossed my arms. "So, are we done?" Hughes hesitated. "One last thing. Can we ask how you know the complainant?" I exhaled through my nose. "I don't. We've barely spoken." Daniels nodded slowly, flipping his notebook closed. "Understood. We'll have a word with her." As they turned to leave, I stepped forward. "Next time," I said, my voice tight, "maybe ask a few more questions before showing up at my door like I'm a criminal." Daniels had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. "Noted, sir." And with that they left, the watchful eyes as I shut the door. I felt it, eyes on me. I turned and sure enough, Karen was standing on her porch, arms crossed, watching. She didn't even look embarrassed. If anything, she looked satisfied, like she had done her duty, like she had proven something, and in that moment I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. I should have slammed the door in their faces, but I knew how that would go, so instead I stood there, arms crossed, while two officers poked around my house like I was some kind of criminal. The whole time, I could feel her watching. Karen, she, stood across the street, arms folded, lips curled into a smug little smirk, like she'd just won something, like she had been right about me all along. I clenched my jaw. I wasn't giving her the satisfaction. The investigation begins. Officer Daniels and Officer Hughes moved through my home with calculated slowness. Daniels checked the living room, scanning my laptop, bookshelves, and the stack of graded papers on my desk. His fingers brushed over a World War II textbook, like the very concept of teaching history was incriminating. Hughes moved toward the kitchen, opening a few cabinets. What was she hoping to find? A stash of stolen BBQ sauce from the last neighborhood cookout? I let out a slow breath. Stay calm. So, I said, voice tight. This is how it works now. Someone doesn't like me, makes up a complaint, and suddenly I have cops searching my house. Daniels didn't answer. Hughes gave a non-committal shrug. We have to follow up on reports. I narrowed my eyes. Even when they're ridiculous. Daniels paused, shifting slightly. Maybe, just maybe, a flicker of doubt crossed his face. Then suddenly, beep, beep, beep. A sharp, repetitive alarm filled the air. My security system. The unexpected twist. All three of us turned toward the sound, coming from the back door. Daniel's hand drifted to his holster. Hughes exchanged a look with him. They heard it too. Something wasn't right. I moved first, stepping toward the back of the house. Mr. Carter, wait. Daniel's voice was firm, but I ignored him. I knew this house. I knew every creaky floorboard, every drafty window, every stubborn door lock, and one thing was certain. That door was supposed to be locked. I reached the back hallway and stopped cold. The back door was cracked open. A gust of cold air slipped through. Daniels and Hughes caught up a second later, eyes widening. Did you leave this open? Daniels asked. I swallowed hard. No, I always lock it. Silence. Then Hughes's radio crackled. Dispatch, we have a possible break-in at Carter residence. Requesting backup. Karen's smugness disappears. I turned toward the front door, and for the first time, Karen looked uneasy. She must have thought she'd exposed me. She must have thought she'd proven her point, but now she was watching two cops draw their weapons and clear my house for intruders. And her smirk, gone. Something wasn't right. The back door had been unlocked, my security system was going off, and now I had two cops sweeping my house like I was living in a crime scene. But the real nightmare, it was just getting started. The digital intrusion after. Checking the house, Daniels and Hughes found no signs of forced entry, no shattered glass, no busted locks, nothing, which meant whoever had been inside had a key, or worse, access to my security system. I grabbed my laptop, my fingers moving. Fast as I pulled up my security feed, every motion-triggered event was recorded. Every login was logged, but when I clicked on the logs, my stomach dropped. A device I didn't recognize was connected to my network. A long string of numbers and letters, but with a custom label that made my blood run cold. Maplewood.watch. One Daniels leaned in. That yours? I shook my head. I've never seen it before. Hughes frowned. Could be a neighbor's signal bleeding over. I exhaled sharply. No, this isn't a Wi-Fi signal. It's connected directly to my system. That's when I clicked into device activity, and what I saw made my skin crawl. Surveillance access granted, live feeds accessed, data transfer initiated. Someone had been watching me, not just hacking my network, monitoring my security. Cameras, for how long? Days, weeks, longer. Daniel's jaw tightened. Who the hell is spying on you? I clicked into the connection logs, searching for an IP address, and when I found it, I froze, because it didn't lead to some random hacker across the country. It led to Karen's house. The smug neighbor turned suspect. I turned slowly toward the window. Karen was still standing outside, watching from her porch, except now she wasn't smirking. She was pale. Daniels followed my gaze, then looked back at the screen. His face darkened. "You're telling me the device spying on you is in her house?" I nodded. Hughes was already reaching for her radio. "Dispatch, we need a warrant request for 382 Maplewood Lane. Possible cyber intrusion, illegal surveillance." Karen must have noticed the shift, because suddenly she wasn't just standing there anymore. She was moving fast. She turned, rushing back toward her door, as if she knew exactly what was coming next. Daniels didn't hesitate. "Go, now." And just like that, the cops weren't investigating me anymore. They were heading straight for Karen Monroe. Karen Monroe always acted like she ran this neighborhood. She watched everyone, tracked who came and went, took notes on who wasn't neighborly enough. But now, the watchful neighbor was about to become the watched. The investigation shifts Daniels, and Hughes moved fast. They crossed the street, approaching Karen's house with the same cautious intensity they had when they first knocked on my door. Except this time, I wasn't the suspect. Karen stood frozen on her porch, eyes darting between them. I could see the exact moment it clicked, the moment she realized this wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. Daniels kept his tone measured but firm. "Mrs. Monroe, we have reason to believe a device in your home is linked to an ongoing cybercrime investigation. We need to take a look inside." Karen laughed. A short, nervous sound. "You're joking, right?" She scoffed. "I'm the one who called you. He's the suspicious one." She jabbed a finger toward me. "This is ridiculous." Hughes didn't budge. "Ma'am, we have direct evidence linking your network to unauthorized surveillance of private security systems." Karen's face twitched. That wasn't the response she expected. I folded my arms, watching. She was scrambling. She tried switching tactics. "This is harassment. You can't just—" "Ma'am, do you have anything to hide?" Daniels interrupted, eyes locked on her. Silence. Karen's jaw clenched. And then she did the worst thing possible. She turned and ran inside. The hidden truth that was all the cops needed. Daniels and Hughes followed right behind her. I stayed on the sidewalk, heart pounding, as they disappeared into Karen's house. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. Then, got it. Daniels stepped out, holding a small black device in his gloved hands. The smoking gun Hughes followed, her expression stone cold. "It wasn't just Adrian," she muttered. I frowned. "What do you mean?" Daniels exhaled sharply. "She's been spying on half the damn neighborhood." The conspiracy unmasked Karen Monroe, the nosy neighbor, the self-proclaimed protector of the community, had been hacking into her neighbor's security cameras, not just mine, everyone's. Her system had access to private Wi-Fi networks, smart, home devices, even email accounts. She wasn't just watching people through their windows. She was reading their texts, their emails, their lives. I let out a slow breath. "Why?" Hughes shook her head. "You're not going to believe this." Then she held up a notebook, handwritten, pages filled with paranoid scribbles. I squinted at the words. "They're watching us. The secret society is real. They control the neighborhood. They control everything." Daniels sighed. "She's obsessed with conspiracy theories. Karen actually believed that our small suburban neighborhood was secretly being controlled by some kind of shadow organization. And so she decided to spy on all of us. For years, the breakdown. By the time the cops led Karen out of her house, she was hysterical. "You don't understand," she shouted. "I was protecting this community. There are forces at play here, bigger than you can even imagine." Hughes remained unfazed. "Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent." Karen struggled as they placed her in the squad car. Her eyes locked onto me one last time, filled with pure hatred. "You're part of it, aren't you?" She spat. I knew there was something wrong with you. I smiled. Enjoy your new neighbors, Karen. And with that, they drove her away. Karen Monroe spent years watching everyone. She thought she was keeping the neighborhood safe. She thought she was exposing the real threats. But now, she was the only one in handcuffs. The arrest heard. Round the neighborhood by morning, the entire town knew. Local woman arrested for cyber intrusion and illegal surveillance. Karen Monroe exposed as suburban spy. Neighborhood watch? More like neighborhood stalker. The details spread fast. Everyone was shocked. For years, Karen had convinced them that she was the protector. Now, they realized, she was the real danger. The fall of the Queen, Karen's charges were serious, unauthorized. Network access, illegal surveillance, identity fraud, and with the amount of evidence Daniels and Hughes found, there was no way out. Karen Monroe, the woman who had once called the cops on me, was now begging for a lawyer. The ironic twist, the best part? She finally got what she wanted, a gated community, with 24-hour surveillance and plenty of neighbors to watch. Unfortunately for her, that community was called prison. The final words, as the cops led her to the squad car, she spotted me. Even in defeat, she still glared, like this was somehow my fault, like I had set her up. I stepped closer, lowering, my voice just enough for her to hear. "Next time, Karen," I said, smiling. "Maybe mind your own business." I let that sink in, then I shrugged. "But hey, looks like you'll have plenty of free time to think about that now." Karen's face twisted in rage, but before she could say another word, the car door slammed shut, and just like that, she was gone, and for the first time in years, the neighborhood was finally at peace.